The creation era. Judo didn't start as a sport. It started as a problem that needed solving. In the late 1800s, Japan was changing fast. Samurai culture was fading, and the old battlefield jujitsu systems that were built for armor and swords were becoming irrelevant. Jigoro Kano looked at those systems and saw something broken. They were dangerous, inconsistent, and impossible to train at full speed without crippling students. So he did something no one else had done before. He rebuilt jujitsu from the ground up. Kano took techniques from classical Japanese jujitsu schools and stripped away what didn't work under pressure. He kept the throws, the pins, the chokes, and the joint locks, but he reorganized them around one simple idea: maximum efficiency with minimum effort. Instead of brute force, judo would be about timing, balance, leverage, and positioning. The real revolution wasn't the techniques. It was how judo was trained. Before judo, most martial arts were practiced through forms and cooperative drills. Kano introduced randori, live sparring, where students could throw, resist, and fight for real. That single decision changed martial arts forever. Suddenly, techniques had to work against someone who was actually trying to stop you. Anything fake disappeared quickly. Kano also created the belt system and ranking structure so progress could be measured and standardized. This wasn't just about motivation. It was about building a system that could scale. Students could move from white to black through skill, not lineage. Judo became something anyone could learn, not just warriors or nobles. In 1882, Kano opened the Kodokan in Tokyo, and that small dojo became the birthplace of modern martial arts. Police, teachers, and military units started training judo because it worked, and it was safe enough to practice hard every day. Judo proved that you could train realistically without destroying your students. This era is why judo matters. It wasn't just another fighting style, it created the blueprint. Live sparring, weight classes, competition rules, coaching systems, and athlete development all came from this period. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, sambo, and even modern MMA all trace their structure back to what Kano built. The creation era turned combat into a science and martial arts into something that could actually evolve. The expansion era. Once judo proved it worked, it didn't stay in Japan for long. In the early 1900s, Jigoro Kano started sending his best students around the world, not as missionaries, but as living proof. They fought, taught, and challenged other martial artists everywhere they went. Europe, South America, the United States, and Russia all felt the impact. Wherever a Kodokan judoka showed up, old fighting systems were tested and often exposed. This was the era where judo stopped being a Japanese art and became a global language. In Europe, judo collided with Greco-Roman wrestling and folk wrestling styles. Instead of rejecting them, judo absorbed what worked. Gripping systems improved, throws became more explosive, and conditioning became more serious. In Russia, judo helped give birth to sambo, where throws, leg locks, and aggressive control were blended into a brutal military system. In Brazil, a young judoka named Mitsuyo Maeda passed judo on to the Gracie family, and that seed would eventually grow into Brazilian jiu-jitsu. What made judo spread so fast wasn't hype, it was proof. Judoka were winning real challenge matches against boxers, wrestlers, and jiu-jitsu practitioners because they understood balance and control better than anyone else. They could take a fight from standing to the ground in one clean movement, and once they were on top, they didn't give space back. This era also changed how people trained. Dojo culture became more serious. Conditioning mattered. Grip strength, posture, and footwork were drilled relentlessly. Throws weren't just techniques, they were weapons. A clean hip throw could end a fight instantly, and that reality shaped how judoka approached training. By the time the 1930s arrived, judo had become the backbone of police and military hand-to-hand programs across the world. It wasn't mystical or ceremonial anymore. It was practical, efficient, and brutally effective. The expansion era is why judo sits at the center of modern grappling history. It didn't just grow. It reshaped everything it touched. The Olympic era. The Olympic era is where judo changed forever. When judo entered the Olympic Games in 1964, it gained something no martial art had ever achieved before: global legitimacy. Overnight, it went from being a powerful fighting system to an international sport with rules, federations, funding, and national teams. Countries didn't just train judoka anymore, they built entire programs around judo. With the Olympics came structure. Training became scientific. Athletes followed periodized strength, programs, technical cycles, and competition calendars. Throws were refined for speed and reliability. Grip fighting became an art in itself. Matches became tactical battles where one mistake could decide everything. This era produced monsters. Japan was no longer untouchable. Europe rose fast with athletes from France, the Soviet Union, and later Georgia dominating through raw power and relentless pressure. Korea brought speed and explosiveness. Each region developed its own flavor, but all of them revolved around one core truth: if you couldn't throw under pressure, you couldn't win. But there was a cost. As judo chased Olympic success, it moved moved away from its self-defense roots. Rules banned leg grabs, limited ground fighting time, and rewarded clean throws above all else. The art became sharper, faster, and more specialized, but also narrower. A judoka could win a gold medal without ever learning how to handle strikes or real chaos. Still, this era pushed judo to its highest athletic level. It created the modern competitor, a grappling athlete with world-class balance, grip strength, and explosive power. The Olympic era is why judo produces some of the most dangerous clinch fighters on the planet, even today. And it set the stage for what came next, the collision with MMA and real-world combat, the MMA era. When mixed martial arts exploded in the late 1990s and early 2000s, the world stopped asking which martial art was the best and started watching the answer play out in a cage. Suddenly, Olympic gold didn't mean much if you couldn't handle punches, takedowns, and ground fighting under pressure. For judo, this era was brutal and honest. Judoka walked into MMA with beautiful throws and perfect balance, then ran into wrestlers who could stuff takedowns and strikers who didn't stand still. Some failed fast, others adapted and changed everything. The ones who survived became legends. Fighters like Karo Parisyan showed the world that judo could dominate the clinch in real fights. He tossed opponents onto concrete with uchimata and harai goshi and finished them with submissions. Ronda Rousey took that blueprint and turned it into a championship machine, throwing elite fighters with hip tosses and arm bars on the biggest stage in the world. Even Fedor Emelianenko used combat sambo, built on judo principles to control and crush heavyweight champions. This era forced judo to evolve. Throws had to work against punches. Grips had to be taken while getting hit. Ground fighting had to be faster, more aggressive, and more complete. Judoka who crossed over learned wrestling defense, boxing footwork, and submission chains because pure sport judo wasn't enough anymore. At the same time, MMA stole judo's best ideas. The clinch, the trips, the balance breaking, the grip control, all of it became standard tools for modern fighters. Even athletes who never trained judo were using judo without realizing it. The MMA era proved something important. Judo wasn't outdated. It just needed context. When adapted, it became one of the most powerful clinch systems ever created. And that adaptation led straight into the modern era, where judo no longer stands alone. It blends into everything. The modern hybrid era. In the modern era, no one trains in a bubble anymore. A judoka isn't only a thrower, and a grappler isn't only a ground fighter. Everyone borrows from everyone, and judo sits right at the center of that exchange. Throws are no longer judo techniques or wrestling techniques. They're just takedowns. You see foot sweeps mixed with wrestling level changes, hip throws chained into leg attacks, and grip fighting blended with collar ties and underhooks. A modern grappler might hit an uchimata, transition to a single leg, finish with a trip, then flow straight into side control without ever thinking about which art it came from. Judo's biggest contribution today isn't a single throw. It's the concept of balance breaking. The idea that you don't force a takedown, you create it by taking someone's posture, their base, and their timing. That principle now lives inside Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, wrestling, and even self-defense systems. Modern judo itself has changed too. Training is faster, more dynamic, and more analytical. Athletes study grip patterns, foot positioning, angles, and timing like chess. They break down matches frame by frame, not to copy moves, but to understand why a throw worked. The old idea of just train harder has been replaced with train smarter. At the same time, the sports side and the real-world side have split. Some judoka chase Olympic medals under strict rule sets. Others take those same fundamentals and apply them to grappling, MMA, or self-defense. The art now supports both paths, and that's what keeps it alive. What makes this era special is freedom. You're no longer locked into tradition. You don't have to bow to a style to use its tools. You can build your own game, mixing judo throws, wrestling entries, jiu-jitsu finishes, and striking awareness into a single system that actually works. Judo didn't fade away. It evolved, blended, and became one of the core pillars of modern combat. The future era. The future of judo isn't about choosing between tradition and realism anymore. It's about building fighters who can move anywhere against anyone under any rule set. Training is already changing. Kids grow up learning balance, grip fighting, takedowns, and ground control at the same time, instead of separating them into boxes. They don't just drill throws, they learn how to chain them into pins, submissions, stand-ups, and escapes. One clean off balance turns into a full sequence, not just a highlight throw. Technology is accelerating everything. Matches are analyzed frame by frame. Coaches break down grip battles, foot placement, and timing patterns. Athletes build game plans the same way MMA fighters do, with specific strategies for specific opponents. The mystery is gone, and that's a good thing. Skill isn't hidden behind tradition anymore, it's built through understanding. The future judoka is a hybrid athlete. They can throw, scramble, control, and finish. They know when to go for a big hip throw and when to switch to a single leg. They know how to pin, how to submit, and how to disengage safely. Judo becomes less about winning a rule set and more about solving a problem in front of you. And that's what makes this era exciting. Judo started as a way to make people better, not just stronger. The future brings it full circle. Smarter training, deeper understanding, and a generation that respects the art without being trapped by it. Judo isn't ending, it's just getting started. If you enjoyed this breakdown of every judo era, hit subscribe, drop a comment about which era you think mattered most, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the real history and evolution of combat.